Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make over some cans and I'm just going to show you some things that you can make out of just old vegetable cans, and I'm even going to use a Pringles can on one of these. So I'm starting with this smaller vegetable can, and I'm going to give this 2 coats of the color buttercream. And then once it's covered and dry, then I'm just going to take some script stamp, and any script stamp will work here, and I'm just going to randomly stamp on the can. Now, I don't want this to be very dark. I just want it to be faint in the background. And obviously this is just a matter of preference. I like the soft look that the script stamping in the back gives, and I love the layered look. So again, just use whatever script that you have on hand, or if you want to do some other stamping in the background instead. Now I've torn out an image from one layer of a napkin, and I'm going to attach that napkin in the description because I just recently purchased it and I know that Amazon still has it. Now I'm stamping with Timber Brown Stays On ink here. You could use black if you wanted. I just didn't want it to be that harsh, so I'm just using the Timber Brown. I like to use Stays On because when you're going to be decoupaging over it, it stays put a lot better than a lot of the other ones. Now I haven't tried the IOD ink, so just use what you're comfortable using, and if you have to use a cheaper ink, then just let it dry really well and before you try to decoupage over the top of it. And because of the way this can is shaped, it being a flat surface all the way around, I could have just decoupaged the whole napkin on, but I didn't want that look. I just wanted the layered look, so I just tore out the image. And I like to tear out the image, again, personal preference, instead of cutting it out, because I like that. I like for that feathered edge to just kind of blend in versus the sharper cut edge. So once this is dry, then I'm just going to stuff a little bit of wadded up paper in the bottom. And I end up gluing that in just to raise this up some. I'm going to be putting some polyfill inside, but I didn't want to have to stuff the whole thing. And so I just glued that in the bottom. And then I'm going to take just the toe of a sock and stuff that so that I can put it down in the polyfill down in that. If you try to put the polyfill in first and then you lay your fabric over the top and try to glue that down in, it just doesn't work well. It isn't a good look. And if you haven't figured out yet, I'm making a pin cushion out of this one. And I'm just tying some jute twine around it. And I guess this is maybe tennis ball size or a little larger. And that just depends on the size of the can that you're using. But I make sure to get that really tight so that it has a smooth look on the top, although I am going to be covering it with some doily. So now that I have that tight, then I'm just going to kind of push it down in there and leave enough out at the top to where it looks like a pin cushion. And then I just kind of glue around that edge. And I'm going to be trimming out so that'll further hold it. So now I'm taking some lace that I had, that's one of the colors in the napkin, and cutting that in half. And I'll use half of it on the top to trim out and half on the bottom. As it turns out, this layer on the top was kind of pointless because I end up covering it later. You'll see what I mean. But my plan here was to put some of that on the top and some on the bottom, but again, I end up covering that up. And now I'm taking some lace from the Dollar Tree and layering over the top of these. So again, it worked well on the bottom, but on the top, after I have put this on here, I decide that I want to take another lace and kind of layer it over the top of the pin cushion to help hold that in better. And that hid the lavender lace on the top, so I could have omitted that step. There's so many items that you can make a pincushion out of, and this is my first time making one from a can. And in hindsight, I probably should have put some weight in the bottom of this. It still works out, but I would have liked to have it just be a little bit heavier. So now I'm building some of my shabby roses, and they're not my shabby roses. Someone else came up with these, but I make them a lot. Just kind of building those on the can itself instead of putting them on a circle and then gluing them on. So I'm going to zoom this next one in a little so that if you're not familiar with these roses, you'll see how easy they are to do. So you just tear a strip of fabric or cut it, and then you're going to tie a knot in the very end of it, and then that knot will be right in the center of your rose. Then you're just going to wrap that around, and you'll twist it and glue it, and twist it and glue it. Now you could twist it the same way the whole time, or you can switch back and forth. Switching back and forth in directions, I feel like gives it a little bit more dimension, but I didn't worry about that much here because these are such small ones. So I've done these two out of a strip of out of a strip of tea towel that I have coffee stained and then ripped a strip from. And now I'm doing one out of this lace that will match my roses. So when I get these roses made, I'm only going to do a few here. Then I'm just going to start gluing some vintage buttons on. And I like to use mostly lighter tones of buttons. Different shades of white are my favorite, and that's what I tend to use more than any other. And I actually tend to use even more small buttons than the larger ones. But I'm just kind of gluing them here and there. And my favorite vintage buttons are the ones that still have the thread inside them. I don't know why. I just like that darker thread, and I just feel like it gives it so much more dimension and texture, so I like to get buttons that still have that on it. Now here, to hide that seam there in the back, I was just going to glue a button straight on, but I decided to take a little tiny bit of that lace and rough up the edges with my scissors and glue that on, letting it kind of stick up some. I don't press it down flat, and then I'll just glue my button in the center of that, and that just adds some texture around your button and keeps it from being quite as boring as just a button glued on. I just love adding scraps of lace for texture. You don't have to have very much at all, so if you find some, maybe some clothing that you've worn out, and before you get rid of it, just take any lace and buttons and embellishments off, and you can use those on your items, even some on your hang tags. So again, I'm just building texture here and adding layers, and I did the same thing with just a little scrap of lace under this button. And now I think that's all the buttons that I'll add, but I'm going to add some little pearl beads. And I find that varying the sizes of these pearl beads just adds more texture and dimension. So once I add enough of these, and I'm happy with the look that I have, that sock on the top, I don't want it to look like a sock. So I need to add some texture to it to keep that from looking like a sock. So I just found an old doily that was damaged, and just cut one of the circles from it and glued that to the top. But I made sure when I glue this on that I just glue around the edges because I don't want to put any hot glue on the top of it. It might keep my pins from sticking in well. So as it turns out, this fit just exactly, and I glued it all the way around the side, but then I wanted to finish that edge, and that's where I added the extra lace on top that hid the rest of my lavender lace. In hindsight, I should have added I should have finished the cushion part of it before I did my trim out, and that would have saved me some lace and some time. Of course, it didn't take that much lace, but it would have saved some time and some unnecessary steps. So next time I'll know to do that. So now I'm going to add a hang tag, and this is one that I did on another video. I just took some file folders and just made a collage of old papers and decoupaged them on, and then cut these up into pieces, and that is some bases for my hang tags. So I just grabbed one of those here. Now I'm just going to layer on some lace, and this lace is purposely longer than my tag because I want to scrunch it up for texture. And again, I'm roughing up the edges of my laces for extra texture and to keep it from being precise. I like the shabby look. So I'm just adding laces and buttons on this one to mimic that same look on the can, and that will make this look custom. And then again, I'm going to add some of those little pearl beads to this one. And then for an extra touch, I put some of the straight pins that had the right colors to match my can on the top. So the next can, I'm using a little bit larger one, and then I'm using some scrapbook paper that is double-sided. And on this back side that I don't really want to use, I am layering a book page so that because actually that part of this will show, or a section of that will. I'm going to wrap this around the can and fold that down. And I know you guys have probably seen these. This scrapbook paper doesn't fit around the can, but I'm not going to worry with that because I'm going to piece that in the front, and when I'm finished with it, you won't be able to tell that it didn't wrap all the way around. Now, what I've glued just around the front of the top, I don't know how I didn't get that in video, is just an old letter that I got in some old paperwork. And I just took part of it and glued it there at the front because I want just a small section there in the front to show. So I didn't have to cover the whole can. I probably covered more than I needed to even of it. So I'm ripping that top off because I want that ripped edge. I don't want to cut any of this because I want that natural edge. So I'm just going to glue this around. And then I'll be rolling that down, if that makes sense. And then it will show the book page in the back of this fabric, and it just has a really neat look when you do that. So you need two different. You don't need the same color on the inside as you have on the outside, if that makes sense. So I like having that script in the background, the handwriting, and then the printed page showing there. I think that look goes well together. So now I'm just gluing it on, and I am using just regular Elmer school glue here. Now you could use Mod Podge. Mod Podge would be great. But the Mod Podge that I have right now is a shiny finish, and I don't want a shiny finish for this if I get some on it. I could just use the decoupage to glue it on and then not put anything over it. And I do, for the most part, not get any on the outside. But I didn't want to take that chance, so I'm just using regular school glue here. Now, I've been told by more than one person that the Elmer school glue can turn yellow as it ages. I haven't had that issue yet, but I don't keep things very long. I just sell them, so I'm not certain. With this one, I don't think it would matter much, but with some items, especially that are going to be outside, it could yellow with the sunlight. So if you're going to be using items outside, I generally don't use the school glue when it's an item that's going to be outside, because I feel like it needs some sort of polyacrylic or something to stand up to outside. So again, I don't usually do that. So I'm just piecing this here, and I'm not leaving that polka dotted side out. I'm just seeing that it fits here. So in using this same fabric or the same paper, you don't really notice that that's pieced in the front, especially since I'm going to be doing some trim out and things. So this can, I'm just going to use this one as a vase. It's just going to have some flowers in it. So not making anything special out of this one, or unusual out of this one rather, but just making it to put some flowers in. And now I'm adding this vintage lace, and I'm pretty sure this lace came from my friend Myra. So again, thank you, Myra. This is just beautiful lace, and I'm very careful with this. When I get a lace that is so pretty and so vintage looking, I'm real careful how much I use of it. And now I'm going to trim out around the bottom with this Dollar Tree lace. And again, I'm just going to build my little shabby roses right on the can. Some of my favorite projects are the ones that you start with what most people would consider trash and something that's headed for the landfill. And because I love to keep that from happening, but I especially love that this is not going to cost me very much at all. I'm going to be showing a few viewer hang tags at the end of this video, so I'm excited about that again. And I'm going to give you a sneak peek of the wall, which still has plenty of room for hang tags. I've just got a good start on them. And what I did was took a wall that I wasn't using, and my husband covered it in foam board, and then we covered it with some lace. And in order to do that, we had to piece it. So we added some doilies and just kind of did somewhat of a patchwork, and that's what the hang tags will go on. So once I get all my roses added to this, then I'm going to take my antiquing ink, the Distress Oxide, and just antique around the top and the bottom, just to keep that from being as much of a stark white against this, because I want this to have a really vintage feel. Now, anytime you use this antiquing ink, you need to seal it. So I do take this outside and turn it upside down and spray just a clear matte finish coat on it to keep that from smearing. And now I'll make the hang tag for this, and I'm going to use some more of that handwriting on that vintage paper. And I'm layering this on top of a piece of cardboard that I've just put a kind of a dry brush coat of white on it, or buttercream. And now I'm antiquing around the edges, and I'll glue that onto this cardboard. And I'm just gluing this on with some regular school glue. I think I used the clear on this. But you could definitely use the white or any kind of glue that you want to at this point. Now, I've already roughed up the edges of my cardboard with my scissors, and now I'm antiquing around that also. And then I'm just going to add some laces and buttons to this one and make it go with the can. Now, I could have added a shabby rose to this. I didn't. I kept it a little bit more simple, but that would definitely bring this together even more. What I did do, though, is just tear some of a rose out from a napkin and glue that on. And then I'll just glue some lace onto this, and that will be enough to bring that together. And in this case, I'm just kind of roughing up a little strip, and I pinch it together in the center and just glue that pinched center down, and that will add some texture and almost look like that's a little bow there when I glue a small button in the center of it. Now a little extra stamping, and then I'll just tie this on with some lace, and this will be finished. So for the third item, I'm taking a bucket that someone had already decoupaged on and had already put a rusty wire hanger on, and I'm just going to not worry with trying to take that decoupage off. I just painted a couple of coats of the buttercream over the top of that. And buttercream is a Dixie Belle color if you've not been watching me. And now I'm going to do some decoupaging all over this, but I'm not going to cover it solid. I'm just going to tear some of these out and glue them here and there. And I don't like any straight edges, so I'm going to have to tear all those straight edges off. And then I'm just going to kind of tear this into pieces and decoupage here and there. So this is going to have some texture to hide because, again, they had decoupaged some images on it. Not just a solid image, but had cut out some different images and decoupaged on. So I need to maybe make sure that I work around all that. So once I get all this decoupaged on, then I'm just going to take some of my DAS clay and roll it out very thin, and then do some impressions on it and tear those impressions out. And that's what I'm going to be adding here and there on the empty places of the can. Now I've rolled this really thin, and again, I'm not going to tear it out. I'm not going to cut it out. I'm just going to tear it out because I want some organic edges here. So I put the little stamp from the set Icy Paris, and that's going to go on the front. But then I'm going to roll the rest of that out and just make some script impressions on it by using my Kindest Regards script stamp. So I just used my Type Bond glue and glued the one on the front, and then the others just kind of randomly here and there. And then once I get those done, then I just took some watered down brown paint and just kind of brushed over all the molds so that the brown would get down in the detail. And I just kind of made sure to concentrate more on the detail because I'm going to be covering the rest of it anyway. So once I get the brown and all the detail on all of the molds, then I just take my paintbrush and put very little of the buttercream on it and almost just kind of drag that across, kind of like a dry brush. But I lay my brush down so that it's only going to get the surface and not down in that detail. And then all your detail will pop. Now, you could do the opposite of what I did, and you could paint your image, your clay mold first. And then once that dried, you could go over it with a darker wax, and the dark would settle down into that. I didn't want to do that because I just didn't want my molds to change color, and I just felt like it would take too much of the darker, and then I would lose a lot of that buttercream color. And then this one could be used as a gardening tote or just anything you want to use it for. It actually could be a vase also. And I forgot to mention that I added some beads on the top for the handle so that you didn't have to carry it with that rusty handle. So the next item is the item that I'm going to use the Pringles can on. So I'm going to make a posy out of this one, and I've done that with a can before, but I thought about actually doing one out of the little shorter Pringles cans, but I wasn't able to find that at my stores, so I just decided to take a full-size can and cut it in half. So I just took the chips out and put them in a baggie and cut this in half, and now I'll have two sides to make something with, but I'm going to use the top of the can for the posy because I'll have that finished edge, and then I can press the bottom together and glue it. I thought about this because it's way easier than trying to fold that metal can, especially for those of us who have some hand issues and maybe don't have as much strength in our hands as we used to, or our, in my case, carpal tunnel gets aggravated. So when I thought about that Pringles can, I thought that was a much better option. So I'm just going to give this 2 coats of the color buttercream, just like if I were painting one of the cans. And I decided to go ahead and paint the inside of this also. Just in case. I didn't paint the whole inside, just around the top of the inside. Again, this is going to be a posy, so it's going to have things in it. I probably could have gotten away without painting any of the inside. I just wanted to make sure that none of that showed. So once it's painted and dried, then you just do it like you would do the regular can. And I'm just tearing out my napkin here so that I don't have any of the straight edges. And I'm decoupaging one layer of the napkin, and this is just one of the smaller napkins, so I'm just going to put one on the front and one on the back. Now I chose this particular napkin because I want to put sunflowers and lavender in this one, so I thought even though that's not lavender in this picture, if I put the lavender with the sunflowers, it would mimic this look. So once I get it decoupaged, then I'm just going to take some of this lavender ribbon and put around the bottom. And I'm just going to glue it around the bottom of the can and let the bottom of the ribbon just kind of be flowy. And then I'm going to just glue some lace ribbon around the top to trim that out. And then I'm going to use this same lavender lace to make my hanger. And the way I make my hanger is I just decide on the length that I want, and I just add an inch or so on each side and tie a knot and let that part just kind of hang down. I like the way it just kind of hangs down, and then I glue the knot to each side of the can at the top. And then I take just another small piece of that lace and tie it in the center and just glue it in the front and just kind of let it hang down. And then I'll finish that off by just gluing a button right in the center. And again, I just hot glue that ribbon down the sides of the top to make my hanger. And now I'm going to fill this. So I just put some floral foam in there, and I didn't bother gluing it. I just cut it to where it would be tight. And now I'm just going to build a little arrangement of sunflowers from the Dollar Tree and lavender from Walmart. And I like a lot of times to arrange in sets of 3. So these larger flowers, I'm going to just start with 3 of those. And I like to have some height in the back. But now I'm just cutting some little sprigs off the Walmart lavender stem and just putting a few of those in there. And it's not going to take very many of those at all. And I generally try to avoid the greenery from the Dollar Tree stems. But I felt like this particular one needed some of those leaves. So I put one little bunch of those leaves in it. Generally, I think that greenery looks really cheap. But just using a few here, I felt like just really completed this look. And then somehow I thought this little tag should have a bee on it. So I had this little bee stamp that I got from my sister. And I'm just layering a couple of different laces over the top of some cardstock. And then I'll stamp that bee on an old book page and antique around the edges and layer that up. And I'm just going to keep this one very simple because it needs to be small anyway. And then I'll just tie that on with a little strip of fabric, and then this one will be finished. So again, if you've been a little intimidated by the posies because of the work that goes into them, consider using the Pringles can because this one was very simple. And now the next item and the last item I felt like was really fun. I'd never tried to make one before. I've seen people make them from the cans, and you just take a can and you're going to turn it into a little makeshift watering can. Obviously, it's not going to work. It's just for looks, but I decided to try this one. And generally what I've seen used as the handle is just a drawer pull of some kind, but I decided that I wanted to use a spoon for mine. So all the work that I saved on my posy and all the wear and tear on my hands was apparently to save them from this one, because bending this little spout was very easy. I didn't think it was hard at all. But bending that spoon in the shape of the handle was a different story. So I'll probably pay for that tomorrow. And you might just want to use a drawer pull on yours also, because it really wasn't very easy unless you have someone who can do that for you. So I just glued that on with some E6000 and a little bit of hot glue to help it stay until it dries, and then that will make a neat little handle. And now essentially we have a little watering can. So I'll do some decoupage on this and some antiquing around the edges, and then this one will be finished. And again, if you don't count that bending that spoon, this was very simple to make. And now comes my favorite part of the video, where I can show the viewers hang tags. And I got some really pretty ones today. This one was sent to me by Martha from Oklahoma. And I just love the little duck in the little rain boots. I think that is a very springy look. And I love the torn edges, and I just think she did a beautiful job on this. And she also decorated the back of it. So thank you, Martha, for this sweet little hang tag. And now the next one comes from Indiana, from Kim. So Kim sent actually a couple of hang tags, and this part is my favorite. She used that lace to raise up that bouquet of roses, or those roses, and it looks like a bouquet because of how she raised it up. And I just think that is just beautiful. I don't think that I would have thought of that, but I just love that look, and I love the little flowers layered on the bottom. This is so my style. And she decorated the back, and I love that also. And now the next one, she did some shabby roses on, and I just love the trim down the side and the little flowers. She put a lot of detail in these, and you guys know that I love all that layering and detail. So thank you so much, Kim from Indiana, for your beautiful hang tags. And as promised, here is the wall that the hang tags are going on. So as you can see, I've got a good little start here. So when you get your hang tags in, I will show those and mention your name if you want. So if you want your full name mentioned, write that on the back of the card or let me know in your letter. But these were just signed with their first name, so I didn't mention the last name, but I'll be happy to if you put that on your tag. And once I get that hang tag wall full, I'll have to come up with something else to show your all's talent, because I'm just really amazed at the beautiful hang tags that you guys have been sending. And I hope you guys are getting some of the weather that we've been getting the last few days. We have some beautiful sunshine today, and it was a little windy, but it was very springy, and I'm excited about that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.